Okay, amazing. Welcome everybody officially. It's wonderful to see all of your faces. I just want to thank all of you for tuning in today. I'm super excited to dive into this event with our esteemed expert today, Lindsey Julian, former Fortune 50 senior marketer turned brand strategist. We're going to talk about defining your brand voice to make a meaningful and memorable impression on your dream audience through refined brand messaging in all of your communications, including your website, your social media, signage, emails, and more. So this event is all about differentiating your brand from competitors and captivating your audience with compelling brand communications. During her decade-long corporate career, Lindsey worked in agency, in-house, and startup environments, launching award-winning marketing campaigns and leading rebrands for household names like Samsung. Now she helps purpose-driven small businesses and startups build brands that stand out and drive sales. We are so excited to learn from you today, Lindsey. We also know how valuable your time is. We're really grateful to you for investing in Dreamers and Doers in this way. And with that, I'm going to very excitedly hand it over to you.
Amazing. That was such an in-depth introduction, so I appreciate that, Nicole. But I will go ahead and share my screen and we'll dive in. Okay, is everyone able to see that? We good to go? Okay, amazing. So, like Nicole mentioned, today we'll be talking about creating your brand voice. And she gave a fantastic introduction, but just a brief intro. Like Nicole mentioned, I'm a brand and marketing strategist. I'm helping now today small businesses stand out and drive sales by building their brand. But for over a decade, I did help countless companies define their personality as a way to attract and connect with their audience, all the way from household names like Samsung and Unilever to now small businesses with often teams of less than 10 people. But no matter how big or small, the industry, solopreneur, B2B, or B2C, all the brands that I've represented have one thing in common, and that is a clearly defined brand voice. So today, that's what I want to talk to you all about, because a brand voice is one of the best ways and a simple and low cost way to set your brand apart and become known and remembered. So before we get into it, I want to do a little exercise with you all to get started. So I'm going to say a brand name, and I want you to note like three words, the first three words that come to mind that you feel represent and encompass this brand. So the brand name is Nike.
Just do it.
What was that?
Just do it.
There you go. And any other words that come to mind?
Innovation.
There you go.
Run.
Run. Okay. So if we were to have everyone share the three words that came to mind, likely we would have many of the same words, or they would be along the same theme. So there's emotions that the things that you are saying are evoking like confident, motivational, ambitious, bold, assertive, right? So the takeaway here is that your brand voice matters because it's this distinct personality that you convey and use to communicate and connect with your audience that will leave a lasting impression and remain top of mind for them. So what are the key facets of a memorable brand voice? Well, first and foremost, it should always be audience centric and align with your audience. So before you even dive into creating the brand voice, you want to go back to your market research and define the relationship in which your audience needs with you. So do they need a trusted advisor, a motivational coach? Do they need a longtime friend? What does your audience need? What pain points do they have? Like dig back into the market research to really figure out how you can align with them and resonate with their needs and use the language that they use so that you capture their attention. Second It should reflect your vision and values. So your vision and values need to be defined before you even truly create your brand voice, because it's important for you to know what it is that you stand for. So if we go back to Nike, someone said innovation. Absolutely, that is one of their pillars. Inclusiveness is another one of their pillars, and inspiration is the last pillar. If we think about Apple, you might think sleek, minimalistic, innovative, stylish. So you really want the brand voice to embody those vision and values that of which you stand for. Third and the fourth kind of go hand in hand with one another. You want the brand voice to embody human traits and characteristics. This is where the personality comes into play, and a way to really humanize the brand, which then evokes emotion and conveys a mood that you want them to have. So if we think about Nike, the mood is that they're creating this for everyday people to feel like they could go chase their goals. Unlike tone, not to be confused with tone, a brand voice remains consistent across all of your communications. It's unchanged. So these are the characteristics that you want to evoke consistently, no matter where your audience is hanging out or where in which you're talking to them. And then the brand voice guides what to say and how to say it, which we'll get into further. But really, if you think about like the punctuation, the vocabulary, the rhythm, the emojis you use, all of these are guidelines that embody your brand voice. So let's get into some examples just so you could see how this comes to light. Nike, we've talked about, so known for bringing inspiration and innovation to every athlete. Notice the asterisk. In the world, Nike's brand voice is bold, motivational, and empowering. Its simple, assertive messaging encourages people to go after their goals. So what I want to focus on here is really audience centric. Every athlete, asterisk in the world, they're meant to, with all their ads, they're masters at storytelling, to inspire everyday athletes to really go after their quote greatness. But their copy tends to be more tight, more succinct. It gets to the point, it's bold, it's assertive. Slack, now moving over to a B2B side, so you could see that this carries regardless of B2B or B2C. Known for making work life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive, Slack's brand voice is clear, concise, and human. It speaks to the reader directly, invites conversation, and rewards the curious. I feel like the relationship that Slack tries to build with its audience is kind of like that trusted longtime colleague that you could turn to, and it's a more of a conversational manner, but it's always still remains polished and professional. And then Chipotle, again, back to a B2C brand, but this differs from Nike in the sense that they tend to be more witty and clever. So known for being real and using real ingredients, Chipotle's brand voice is casual, transparent, and witty. It's clever, cheeky humor, and relatable language, engages and connects with customers. So on this bag itself, you could see our chips are lovingly crafted for maximum scoopage. They always use like fun, kind of trending language that will resonate with their audience. So it feels like you can almost sit down with them at the dinner table, but they do lean a little more bold too at times. Like I saw one of their ads with one of the huge burritos, and it said like farm to face. So obviously that's a play on farm to table. But they do fun things like that, and they've been consistent for years. They've had the same brand voice marketer. So would someone viewing your content on multiple channels know that it all came from you, from the same brand? The power of the brand voice is that if your content were to show up without your logo, people would instantly recognize it and know who it's from. So without a brand voice, you could end up with this random assortment of voices and tone and the content that you produce across your communications. And that could provide a really confusing experience and lose the consistency of being recognizable. And it then lacks in terms of strengthening your brand identity. So not only is your logo important in this visual identity, but the way in which you talk to your audience is just as important. They go hand in hand. They're married to each other. So having an inconsistent brand experience can become even more exasperated as your organization grows or as you outsource to freelancers or agencies or things like that. So having this clear playbook of brand guidelines is really important so that you remain consistent across all of your communications. And that includes both verbal and nonverbal communication, online and offline. So really the key benefits here of your brand voice is, again, it humanizes your brand. It creates that personality by touching on those human traits and characteristics. It then attracts in the right audience because you did all of this upfront work to really get to know who they are, what they need, how they speak, where they're hanging out. And then it builds this emotional connection and trust, like we talked about, by conveying a mood. If you think about like if you were to sit down with a friend, you instantly know what that friend's personality is going to be like. And that's what creating your brand voice does for you as well. It stands out, it differentiates you so that you become recognizable in a crowded market against your competitors. And then it ultimately leaves this lasting impression by positioning it in the top of mind for your consumers to drive loyalty. So when we talked about Nike, you all instantly knew their tagline, you knew what they stood for, things of that nature. It's a great way to position you as well. So the rest of this presentation is going to be really interactive to give you a jumping off place for your brand voice. So before we dive into that, Nicole, I just wanted to check in with you. Any questions come through before we get in?
No questions so far.
Okay, amazing. So I want to provide you all with a jumping off place for your brand voice. And I feel like while this leans a little bit more tone, this is a great place for you to just kind of start to quickly jot down where you think you fall on this matrix. And the goal here is often the brands that get lost in the marketplace or become unrecognizable is they fall along this neutral zone. So they have like a friendly, structured voice, and that's nice, but it won't make you stand out. So depending on if you're B2B or B2C, B2B, if you were to see this on a like X and Y axis, it has a bit of a distinct zone where you can hang out, whereas B2C can get a little more extreme and be along these matrices. So if you're B2B, I recommend not getting super far one direction, but enough to make you not be on the neutral zone. Whereas if you're B2C, you could get a little more funny, a little more casual. So where would you fall on this matrix if you were to quickly map this out for your own brand? Do you lean more serious or more funny? Are you more formal or are you more casual? Casual being, think of like conversational. This is where we could think of like Slack as a B2B company leans a little more conversational, a little more casual. Chipotle, as the example, very casual, but still has tighter copy. So formal or casual, respectful or irreverent. And something to note here in terms of irreverent, this isn't necessarily like disrespectful. This is more so like, do you cuss? Would you fill in, would you say the cuss word or would you fill in a cuss word with like an asterisk? Or are you a little more playful and loose. And then lastly, are you matter of fact? Are you to the point? So like if we think about Apple again as an example, unbelievably thin, right? It is like matter of fact, to the point in terms of the voice in which they use. Or are you enthusiastic? Are you a little bit more loose with your copy and you might throw exclamation points in there? If you look at the difference, Apple rarely uses an exclamation point, if ever. So are you matter of fact and to the point, or are you enthusiastic? So all of this will ultimately help inform your guidelines so that you can think of what kind of punctuation you use, what kind of vocabulary you use, what kind of emojis you use, things like that. Our chat's coming through, Nicole. Are we good?
Yes, and actually we do have a quick question if you're up for answering one.
Sure.
So Pamela's curious about how brand voice plays into key messaging during media or in-person meetings.
So I tend to say for the brands in which I work with, I lean, so you'll think about like point of view as an example. On the website with the brands in which I work with, I tend to use like you or our or we type of copy, which would be like a second person point of view. But if you're writing something like a press release or a pitch or things like that, you tend to want to be a little more tight, a little more professional. So that is one area, and that's actually a guideline that I tend to put in my clients' playbooks is like the place where you want to be a little more tight, a little more polished, a little more professional, and use like the third person point of view for your company would be in pitching to the media or sharing a press release with them. Does that help answer the question?
Yes. Just having an issue like online, I'm fine. I mean, I feel like I aligned with my book. I looked at my brand values, but I got some feedback this weekend. I'm I don't I'm not landing, the way that and when I say landing, when someone asks me the question like what is modular fashion, I'm not landing directly on that point. I tend to kind of go around and I've lost the person by then. And
Mm.
I've done all the work, I've done all the personality tests. I'm sitting here looking at my entire brand deck. I've got 3 of them. So all of the things that you're talking about, I already have. And I don't have a problem talking in person, but I have a problem with my key messaging in
Mhm.
terms of being distinct in that branding key messaging.
That's what I was going to say, Pamela. It doesn't sound like it's a brand voice challenge that you're up against. It sounds like there might be some tweaking that needs to be done with the elevator pitch of your brand messaging architecture. And so it'd be worth revisiting, your audience, seeing what's landing with them, what their needs are, going back there. But it doesn't sound to me that it's necessarily a brand voice challenge or obstacle. It sounds like there's a challenge with the key messaging where it's either not touching on the pain point with the target audience and getting to it immediately to get them to latch on to it and
Right.
providing you as the authority of the solution. So I think it's less brand voice and probably more a revisit of thinking about positioning statement comes to mind for me and an elevator pitch for you. Is that
Okay.
helpful?
It's very helpful, actually. I thought maybe I'd done it all wrong, but thank you.
Yeah. It's probably just some tweaks. And I don't know how long you've been in business and how long you've been using that pitch, but sometimes that's not always evergreen, right? Because as things change and as things evolve and tools evolve, then the needs also change with that. So you'll want to adapt the messaging as such.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Did everyone, awesome. I saw a thumbs up from you, Nicole. Has everyone mapped out where they are with the tone matrix? Because we're going to dive deeper into this. This is like a rough starting place to start getting your wheels turning of where you might land here. We good to move forward? I can't see everyone, but I'm going to assume we're good. Okay. So now I want to really create like the personality for your brand by asking some questions that will, again, give you a jumping off place. We won't be able to get into like all the guidelines creation today, but this should help start to humanize your brand as you think of what you want your brand to represent and how you want to communicate that to your audience. So, if your brand were a person, how would you describe their personality? And I'll give you all a minute to jot down your notes. And as that person, what is their relationship to your clients or your customers? So again, thinking back to Nike, like I would think of them as a motivational coach, like the one in my ear, like if I'm at a Pilates class telling me like, or spin class, like telling me to spin faster. Um, are you, if you're B2B, like, are you a trusted advisor? Are you an experienced mentor? What is your relationship to your clients or customers? And again, this is where defining that relationship is so important because this is where you want to create that emotional connection for them to latch onto so that you could ultimately build that trust. Nicole, I see some chats coming through. Should I pause here or keep? Okay, cool. And then sometimes, like, if that's too broad, it's helpful to think about a celebrity to encompass the brand because you can instantly identify their personality. So, if you could assign any celebrity as a spokesperson or a muse for your brand, who would it be and why? I'll give some examples here. So, I had a client who feels like they're a mashup of Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds because they're both savvy. They take their craft seriously, but they don't take themselves too seriously. They're really approachable. They're down to earth. Um, I personally, my celebrity spokespeople would be Jennifer Lawrence and Emma Stone, because I feel like they also, in the same vein, are approachable, take their craft seriously, um, super conversational, things like that. So if you could assign any celebrity as a spokesperson or a muse for your brand, who would it be and why? And then what are 5 to 10 adjectives that describe your brand? Thinking, are you knowledgeable, trustworthy, um, approachable, quirky, witty? What are 5 to 10 adjectives that describe your brand? And then what is your brand not? What don't you want your brand to be? And sometimes this might be easier than starting with the 5 to 10 adjectives that describe your brand. So are you approachable, but you're not overbearing? Are you knowledgeable but never a know-it-all? Are you confident but not cocky? Things like that. And then lastly, what quote, motto, or mantra best represents your brand? For everyone a minute or so to wrap up here. And then if anyone wants to share or has questions, feel free. Okay, give everyone 15 more seconds to wrap up. Okay, how did that go? Were these questions hard? Anyone getting stuck? Did it bring to light the personality you want your brand to convey? How are we all feeling?
So, Apia says, it's nice to do the not list actually,
Hmm.
with the we are this, but not this.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I find with my clients that that's an easier place to start is what you don't want your brand to be. And it helps bring to light what you do want it to stand for and your voice.
And the using high profile actor or actress that really helped, because you already have fantasized who you want to use your brand anyway.
Right.
So you almost can, that person typically will work because they personify what you want your brand to say. So
Amazing.
I had thought about it the way you said it, and that's brilliant.
Oh, good. I'm glad you found that helpful. Who do you have, Pamela? I'm curious.
Zendaya.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
I
Yeah,
mean, she is the future of everything.
amazing. So, what are some of the characteristics? What are some of the traits that you want the brand to convey?
um, Futuristic, knowledgeable, passionate, creative, loving. And those are the things that I see her as, like she's creating, she and what's his name? Law Roach, they're creating a new legacy of luxury that we just haven't seen before because a lot of times they don't use the big houses.
Amazing. I love that. And there's a sense of like boldness to her as
Yeah.
well that I feel like she conveys. She steps into a room and I feel like demands presence, which is really
Yeah.
powerful. Okay, amazing. Anyone else bring to light anything for you? Anything you want to workshop?
Allie just mentioned that she agrees the not list is really helpful in defining what she wants her brand to stand for.
Good. Allie, what don't you want your brand to be?
Oh, and she might, you know what? She might have hopped off. She also in her message said I have to hop off for another call, but just wanted to make that. She might have just hopped off a second ago.
She does not want her brand to be loud. Okay, awesome. So ultimately, what the answers to these end up transpiring into, which we don't have time to get into on this call, but is the guidelines. So these would act as your do's and your don'ts and the characteristics for how you want to show up in the world in terms of your online and offline communications. So this is an example of a client's, but what you'll see here is it begins to be really granular and detailed, and the types of, do you use contractions? If so, then you probably have a more approachable conversational type of brand. Do you use acronyms? And what kind of punctuation do you use? Do you not be overly grammatically correct in how you speak? So do you start sentences with but and instead of comma but and have more loose copy? All of those things come into play, and then ultimately, as your organization grows and expands, you have this playbook that you could pass off typically in your onboarding process to anyone that you're bringing on, so that your content creation and the way in which you speak to people, in Pamela's instance, if they're going and pitching to the media, every department then is using the same tone and the same voice, so that there's always this consistent, recognizable experience across all of the touch points. So I know that we did not have time to get this granular. So what I wanted to offer to you all on this call is, should you want to dive deeper into your brand voice, would love to offer a one-on-one complimentary 30-minute strategic session. Just feel free to, I have my information here. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn or send me an email and say hello. And I would love to help you dive deeper. So Pamela, I'm looking at you. If you want to connect and kind of dive into your elevator pitch too, that's an option as well. Happy to be a second pair of eyes for you and dive into that. But definitely wanted to offer you all on this call a complimentary 30-minute session should you want to dive deeper into this together one-on-one.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Of course. That's all I've got. So Nicole, I will pitch it back over to you.
Amazing. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for offering that. That's such a wonderful thing for you to offer. So yeah, we can open it up for questions, and feel free, we can drop them into the chat, or I think we have like a tight enough group that we can unmute and it shouldn't get too chaotic. But if people want to drop in with their questions, and we'll leave some time for that. And then yeah, and then maybe gift everybody a little bit of their hour back too, if we end up wrapping up before the hour. So yeah, feel free to drop, and I can moderate two questions coming from the chat. So Anitra said, thank you for that. Christina said, thank you. This was great.
Amazing.
So we'll give everybody a second here.
That's okay to also just say versus writing it.
Hi, Marie. Yes, totally.
Hey. So, and I didn't join the first half. I was on another call, so I heard the last bit, but really thoughtful, and I liked yeah, the do's, don'ts. So I always like when it's like practical advice. So question is, and I've been a CMO for, brands and like no marketing, and branding as well, but I'm currently like building my own personal website, which is so weird because I feel like I've done it for so many other brands and people,
Yeah, you're speaking
but not for
language right now.
myself.
Yeah.
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 So, and I'm doing that as I'm starting a new gig uh in September, but I just thought, I don't know, it's been so long, and like now my new, like my personality is definitely different to like, a decade ago. And I just don't want it to have, my LinkedIn presence or IG. And so I just want to have like a simple, I'm like a simple Squarespace page, where it's like my brand. But I'm curious, I'm pretty clear on like what my brand is in terms of like the tone, the photography, like the layout. But do you have any suggestion on call to actually don't really have a call to action? Like, um, is it because it's just like a landing page, but I don't have, for example, book 30 minutes with me, um, or is it just like click here to follow on IG, or like what are some of the call to actions that you have for like personal branding that you see effective?
Yes. Well, so let's go back to your goals. What's your objective? What with building the personal brand? What are you hoping to achieve?
Now it's kind of like a repositioning that, I've been a marketer in corporate, working for like Chanel, Adidas, and like globally. And then I've been an entrepreneur selling my last company 4 years ago. So like tech. So now I've really gotten a lot more into art. And so, but no one really knows that, like no one meaning outside of my group of friends, like people I see, right? It's kind of, but now the next gig will be more in the art world. So I'm like combining my passion. So the goal, I guess, is it's a little bit more accountability at this point, and like showcasing for the first time that I actually am drawing and that I'm like collecting art in a small way. And like it's almost like building in public, but like becoming more an art person. So um I don't know yet, and I'm still figuring out if that equals increased follower base,
Mhm.
like in order to like be more accountable for it. But yeah, sorry, I don't have a defined answer yet on that.
Okay, so I think that would be the best starting place is in building the personal brand. What are you trying to grow the network or put your stake in the ground for authority building, or are you trying to build deeper connections with those in the art world? So I know all of this is probably not rocket science to you, but sometimes it's just helpful to have that sounding board on the
For
other
sure, yeah.
side. And I've been there, so I can completely relate to that. Like building my own messaging is a beast. So I think revisiting the goals of, okay, well, as I build out this personal brand, if you have a portfolio for this, art, maybe it's to drive them to see the portfolio, or is it to build connections in the art world and have awareness that you have this portfolio. So I think getting really clear on like who you're trying to connect with, because you have this really broad, beautiful expertise, but getting more granular and kind of where you want to take the personal brand of like who you want to connect with, what authority you want to build with them, what the thought leadership pieces are going to be if you're building thought leadership. Things like that will then inform the call to action. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's super helpful because those are also the questions I'm happy that at the moment I'm not really under the gun of like building that
Mhm.
thought leadership. So it's like more so almost like an accountability, and that's why I'm like putting it out there to showcase, hey, I'm now in that world. So it's probably the closest is probably building the network, which in this case is followership, in order to then have serendipitous moments.
Yeah, so maybe it's something as simple as let's connect or say hello or things like
Right. Yeah,
that. And it
exactly.
and it takes
Yeah.
you to the main platform where you want to build that. And maybe don't overwhelm them at the beginning with LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter, and all these things. Like, what platforms specifically do you want to be narrowly focused on, and then grow your network there, and then land and expand.
Thank you.
Of course. Of course. Anyone else?
What do you think about the brand personality test? Because I think the hardest thing about trying to do this was it'd be easy. Like, it was easy to do it for the dental offices, our family dental office. That was easy. But when it came to what I was doing it for myself, it's almost like I needed that brand archetype personality test, because it feels so vulnerable because it's so personal.
Yeah. So are you referring to a personal brand, Pamela?
Yes, not even a personal brand, but what she's doing, it's her brand, but it's still persona of her, because it's art that comes out of her. So she's the maker. And I was just wondering about, what do you think about they have brand archetype tests, and you take them and you find out, are you passionate? Are you the lover? And it gives you kind of, what you need to do to be able to be authentic. Not just in your personal branding, but, it's coming out of her. But, and it really did help me figure out, how to show up authentically and not to have to, change personas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great tip. And I think it also provides some structural boundaries for how you want to show up online as your personal brand. Because there's some things that you probably don't want to convey, right? Like or you do. It's all kind of preference, but do you keep your family dynamics and relationships private and keep it to the art pillar and your CMO pillar and so forth? So I think doing something like that, I love the book. I want to say it's just called The Alter Ego, but he coaches like Olympic athletes and celebrities and talks about how, like Beyonce has Sasha Fierce, or there's the wide receiver Jefferson who goes out and puts the necklace on, like a visual cue to get you to tap into that alter ego, to kind of reduce that vulnerability that comes with building the personal brand. So I think that's a really wonderful tip, Pamela. I love that. Okay, awesome. Nicole, if there's nothing else, I will pass it back to you, but I appreciate each and every one of you who joined, and I hope you found value in this. And again, please feel free to reach out and connect and say hello. And if you want to dive deeper, I am happy to do so.
Thank you, Lindsey. Thank you so much for this. This is wonderful. And thank you for opening up your calendar to fellow members. It's amazing and so generous. And this was wonderful. So lots of appreciation in the chat coming through for you and all the wisdom and expertise that you shared. So thanks for your time. And it was great to see all of you. Thank you for joining, and wishing you all an amazing rest of your week. I hope to see you all at another Dreamers and Doers event soon. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Lindsey.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Lindsey.